to investigate a mountain that our research indicated was the real Mount Sinai, where the law was given. And we were proceeding to do this in what we felt was an orderly manner. We apparently got close to some missiles.
Deep in the scorching heart of Saudi Arabia, beneath layers of sand and centuries of silence, something impossible was waiting to be found. Something that would shatter everything we thought we knew about one of history's most famous stories. What you're about to witness isn't just another archaeological discovery. It's the moment when science collided with faith, when skeptics became believers, and when the very ground began to speak truths that have echoed for over 3,000 years. This is the story of how a group of atheist scientists, armed with nothing but curiosity and cutting-edge technology, accidentally uncovered what might be the most significant biblical site ever found, and why some of them now refuse to talk about it. For over 2 millennia, pilgrims have climbed what they believed was Mount Sinai in Egypt's desert peninsula. Thousands have knelt at its summit, touching stones they thought had witnessed Moses receiving the 10 Commandments. But what if they were wrong? What if the real Mount Sinai had been hiding in plain sight, locked away in one of the world's most restricted regions? The seeds of doubt were planted decades ago by an unlikely figure, Ron Wyatt, a nurse anesthetist from Tennessee with an extraordinary passion for biblical archaeology. In the late 1980s, while mainstream scholars focused on Egypt, Wyatt was studying ancient texts with the precision of a detective. Wyatt noticed something others had missed. The Bible clearly states that after fleeing Egypt, Moses lived in Midian, a region the ancient texts placed not in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula, but in northwestern Saudi Arabia. Following this breadcrumb trail, Wyatt made a decision that would change his life forever. He would sneak into Saudi Arabia illegally, risking imprisonment or worse, to find the real Mount Sinai. What happened next reads like a thriller novel. In 1988, under cover of darkness, Ron Wyatt and his small team crossed into one of Saudi Arabia's most restricted military zones. They weren't treasure hunters or thrill seekers. They were following a theory that could rewrite history. Using only basic equipment and biblical descriptions as their guide, they made their way to a towering peak the locals called Jabal al-Lawz, the Mountain of Almonds. What they found there defied explanation. The summit was scorched black soie, not from volcanic activity which doesn't exist in the region, but as if subjected to intense, supernatural fire. Just as the Bible described, Mount Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. But the burned peak was only the beginning. Near the base of the mountain, Wyatt discovered massive stone structures arranged in precise circles. Etched into nearby boulders were ancient petroglyphs depicting cattle and bulls, eerily matching the biblical account of the golden calf incident. Most remarkably, they found an enormous split boulder in the middle of the desert with clear evidence of massive water erosion, exactly matching the biblical description of Moses striking the rock at Horeb, from which water gushed forth to sustain 2 million people. Wyatt documented everything he could before Saudi authorities discovered their presence. But when he returned to America with his photographs and claims, the academic world dismissed him as a religious zealot with an overactive imagination. His evidence was locked away, forgotten by mainstream archaeology. For 30 years, Jabal al-Lawz remained untouched, its secrets buried under bureaucratic red tape and scholarly skepticism, until a group of researchers with no religious agenda whatsoever received unprecedented access to the Forbidden Mountain. In 2018, something extraordinary happened. The Saudi government, as part of its Vision 2030 modernization program, began granting limited research permits to international teams studying ancient trade routes and tribal movements. One such team was composed entirely of secular researchers, geologists, archaeologists, and historians who described themselves as either agnostic or atheist. Led by Dr. Eric Anderson, a respected European geologist, and Dr. Sarah Chen, a Chinese-American archaeologist specializing in Middle Eastern cultures, the 8-person team arrived at Jabal al-Lawz in March 2019 with state-of-the-art equipment, ground-penetrating radar, drone photography, carbon dating tools, and 3D mapping technology. What they discovered over the next 6 weeks would challenge everything they thought they knew about history, science, and the nature of truth itself. Dr. Chen was the first to notice the anomalies. While cataloging stone formations near the mountain's base, her team's ground-penetrating radar revealed massive circular structures buried beneath centuries of sand. As the team carefully excavated the site, they uncovered 12 distinct stone pillars arranged in a perfect line, exactly matching the biblical description of the altar Moses built, with 12 pillars representing the 12 tribes of Israel. Anderson's geological analysis that truly shook the team. Using spectrographic analysis, he confirmed that the mountain's peak had been subjected to temperatures exceeding 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Hot enough to fundamentally alter the molecular structure of granite. Team member Dr. James Roberts, a British expert in ancient metallurgy, made perhaps the most unsettling discovery. Hidden in caves around the mountain were fragments of what appeared to be golden artifacts, mixed with ash and burned organic material. The carbon dating placed these materials at approximately 1400 BCE, exactly when biblical scholars date the Exodus. The gold showed signs of having been melted and reformed, consistent with the golden calf narrative. 3 weeks into their expedition, while mapping water sources in the region, the team encountered something that defied all logical explanation. In the middle of one of Earth's most arid deserts stood a massive boulder split perfectly down the middle with clear evidence of water erosion carved into its base. Hydrologist Dr. Maria Gonzalez calculated that the erosion patterns indicated a sustained flow of millions of gallons of water over several decades, enough to sustain a population of approximately 2 million people. The math was staggering. This wasn't a small spring or seasonal creek. This was a massive sustained water source in the middle of the desert. It should be impossible. As the team stood before the split rock, several members later admitted they felt an overwhelming sense of awe and fear. Dr. Anderson, a lifelong atheist, was photographed by his colleagues kneeling beside the rock, tears streaming down his face. That night, team communications with their home institution suddenly became guarded and cryptic. Something was happening to these researchers, something that would soon tear their expedition apart. By the 5th week, cracks were appearing in the team's unity. What had started as an objective scientific expedition was becoming something none of them had signed up for. Personal journals and recorded conversations, later leaked to the media, revealed the growing tension. Dr. Roberts, the metallurgist, was the first to break. After discovering Hebrew inscriptions on several artifacts, inscriptions that carbon dated to the exact period of the Exodus, he abruptly left the expedition and flew back to London. The remaining team members faced an impossible choice: publish their findings and face potential ridicule from the scientific community, or bury the evidence and live with the weight of what they'd discovered. What happened next reads like a conspiracy thriller. Within days of the team's return to their respective countries, powerful forces began working to suppress their findings. Dr. Anderson's university suddenly withdrew funding for his research. Dr. Chen found herself transferred to a different department. Their preliminary report, submitted to the Journal of Archaeological Science, was rejected without peer review, an almost unprecedented move. The Saudi government, initially cooperative, suddenly clamped down on the site. Military fences appeared overnight. Security cameras were installed. All future research permits were indefinitely suspended. But in the digital age, truth has a way of surfacing. Leaked drone footage, smuggled photographs, and anonymous testimonies began appearing on social media and alternative research platforms. Despite efforts to suppress the story, news of the discovery spread like wildfire through online communities, religious groups, and independent researchers worldwide. Dr. Lennart Muller, a Swedish researcher who had previously supported Ron Wyatt's claims, published an open letter that went viral within hours. His message was clear: the scientific community could not allow politics, pride, or fear to suppress what may be the most significant archaeological discovery of their lifetime. The evidence speaks for itself, he argued. The question is whether we are brave enough to listen. Religious leaders across denominations called for transparency. Secular archaeologists demanded access to the data. Even governments began asking questions about why such momentous findings were being hidden from public scrutiny. Online petitions demanding site access gathered millions of signatures. Documentary filmmakers, journalists, and researchers from around the world began planning their own expeditions to the region. Perhaps the most profound impact of the discovery wasn't on archaeology or theology, but on the lives of the researchers themselves. Dr. Anderson, who spent 40 years believing that faith and science were incompatible, now realizes they might be two different languages describing the same ultimate reality. Dr. Chen, once a staunch materialist, began studying comparative religion and eventually converted to Christianity. She explains that you can't stand in the presence of such evidence and remain unchanged. Something happened on that mountain 3,400 years ago, and they witnessed its aftermath. Even Dr. Roberts, who fled the expedition, later admitted that the discovery had fundamentally altered his understanding of history and truth. He ran because he was terrified, not of what they found, but of what it meant. Some truths are too big to process immediately. Today, Jabal al-Lawz remains heavily guarded, its secrets protected by military barriers and political sensitivities. But the questions raised by the 2019 expedition continue to resonate worldwide. If this truly is Mount Sinai, it would revolutionize our understanding of biblical history, ancient geography, and the intersection of faith and archaeology. It would vindicate Ron Wyatt's decades-old claims and force a complete reevaluation of Exodus scholarship. More importantly, it raises profound questions about the nature of historical truth itself. How many other ancient accounts, dismissed as mythology, might actually be grounded in physical reality? The story of Jabal al-Lawz reminds us that truth has a way of emerging, no matter how deeply buried or how fiercely suppressed. From the blackened summit to the split rock, from the golden calf altar to the 12 stone pillars, the evidence speaks with a voice that transcends religious and academic boundaries. Ron Wyatt, who died in 1999, never lived to see his discoveries vindicated by independent secular research, but his courage to follow evidence wherever it led, even into forbidden territory, paved the way for one of archaeology's most significant breakthroughs. The atheist researchers who set out to document ancient trade routes ended up documenting something far more profound: the footprints of the divine in human history. Today, as political winds shift and transparency movements gain momentum, there's growing hope that Jabal al-Lawz will eventually be opened to full international archaeological investigation. Until then, the mountain keeps its secrets, a silent witness to events that change the world. As the ancient psalmist wrote, "Truth shall spring out of the earth." In the forbidden mountains of Saudi Arabia, that prophecy seems to be unfolding before our very eyes. The search for truth continues.